So today we're talking about all-out joy, putting our energy out into the universe and experiencing a kind of joy that is unconditional. I experience unconditional joy. Together? I experience unconditional joy, which is very different than happiness and is one step down from bliss. Now, joy is from the root word, same word as jewel. It is a jewel-like looking at experience unconditionally, being able to experience through every facet a sense of wholeness and completion. And when Jesus talked about joy, he said, "Let my joy be in you so that your joy can be complete or full." So there's a completion. It's something that has no opposite. It's something that's not conditional. It's something that's not dependent on, I win the lottery, I get the date, I get the thing that I want. It's something that we experience innately. It's a wellspring from within our being that's constantly nourishing us and constantly moving through. Happiness, on the other hand, as I've shared before, is based in the same root as happenings, happenstance, haphazard. It has to do with ups and downs. And hey, happiness is part of life. I mean, the Bears win, you're happy. If the Bears lose, you're not happy. Whatever. But, and it's part of life. But do you want to live your life from that place? And so the spiritual path is moving from the conditional life to the unconditional life. From the pairs of opposites, like, dislike, up, down, good, bad, to a place where it's coming from within. Because eventually the outer world's not going to give it to you. Isn't that true? Mm-hmm. I mean, the outer world is never going to give you what you want 100% of the time. Instead, there's going to be always some ups and downs because it's part of the creative struggle of spiritual growth. It's part of the learning experience that is life. But we learn through life by lifting out of that conditional happiness into unconditional joy. Just like we talk about unconditional love, you move from the conditional love, Jesus called it philia, which is like, dislike, and it's part of life. And he said sometimes he used the word philia in Greek, but into agape, which is unconditional love. So we also move from conditional happiness into unconditional joy. But he gave some considerations for us to look at. He gave us some things to see that would generate that kind of joy. And the first thing he said was that this joy had to happen in relationship with others as we share our love with each other. That when we reach out, and I see this as almost like a cross, like there's a vertical and a horizontal. This is the horizontal. It's moving out like this. And when we connect with that kind of expression of love towards each other, then and only then can we begin to experience that joy within us. There's that famous quote. I went online to check, what did Jesus say about joy? I'm going to talk about joy. Google it, right? So, I have told you this so that my joy may be in you, so that your joy may be complete. My commandment is this, that you love one another just as I loved you. So, what is that? That is, loving one another generates that joy. It generates that kind of joy that is complete, that is not conditional. A joy that is whole, that is not dependent on circumstances being a certain way. A joy that is fulfilling and fulfilled within our very beingness itself. So that's the first thing. The second thing is connecting with our source. It's the vertical part. It's the connecting with that source that's within us. Until now you haven't asked for anything in my name. Ask and you will receive so that your joy may be complete. So he called it asking in his name, but it means connecting with your source, whatever it is that's going on with you, connecting with your source in every circumstance in your life. Connecting with your source. And then what does that mean? That's the vertical. That's getting in touch with that higher reality within you. So let's talk about these two things, these two aspects of your being, the horizontal and the vertical. And let's talk about how do we get in touch with those things. Remember Mother Teresa. She made 2 rules for anybody who wanted to serve with her in Calcutta. And the first rule was that you had to spend 1 hour a day in the vertical, connecting silently with your source. You remember that? But the second one is not as well known. It's spending 1 hour a day, not just connecting with your source, but playing with others. She required them to play cards or play tennis or play ping pong or basketball, but being in relationship with others in a sense of joy. I remember when I was, and it's a balance point. You know, you may need more of the horizontal, you may need more of the vertical. Ask yourself, where do I need to balance out? I spent much of my life in a very ascetic kind of consciousness, very much in my head, and very much focused on my spiritual stuff. And there I was, a minister, you know, and I just got ordained, and I went through 2 crises. I went through a divorce, it's 1980, and I also went through my dad's death, and I was really going through a really tough time, and I was asking, what's missing in my life? There's something missing. And what came to me was, I asked, what do I need in my life? And I saw television. A television? What's that? I needed to play. And I didn't even own a television because, you know, I wasn't going to take my time with a television, you know? Yeah, I told this joke at the first service, and only a couple of people, Megan's one of them, had heard it before, so I'm going to tell it to you. But it's about taking things too seriously on the spiritual level. And that may not be the problem with most of the people here, but it is a problem, and it was a problem for me. So what there was a monastery, and they had to keep silence in the monastery, and they were only allowed 2 words every 10 years that they could speak aloud. And at the end of the first 10 years, the monk was brought into the abbot, and the abbot looked at the monk and said, "My son, what are your 2 words?" And he said, "Food cold." "Thank you, my son, you can go now." 10 years passed. He came back in, and the abbot said, "Yes, my son, what are your 2 words?" "Bed hard." "Yes, son, I understand. You may go now." The 30th anniversary, he came in. It had been 10 years since he'd spoken. He says, "Yes, my son, you may speak your 2 words." "I quit." And the abbot said, "Well, I'm not surprised. You've been complaining ever since you got here." So I needed to balance out my life, and I realized here I was, 27 years old. I didn't know how to play tennis. I didn't know how to play golf. I'd never gone skiing. I'd never played volleyball, and that was disastrous. I lasted 10 minutes on that. So I gave that up. But I took lessons in these things, and I didn't stick with all of them. You know, I didn't exercise. I began to jog, and so where in your life do you need to balance out? I look at my life and I see today that it is truly about being balanced. So many ministers, almost all ministers now that I see, and there's all these things that are out there, say, "Oh, if you're a minister, you've got to take a sabbatical." And it used to be every 7 years. Now they're saying every 3 years, take a sabbatical, because you're going to burn out otherwise. And I can understand that, because early in my career, during that period of time I'm talking about, I was burning out. You know, I remember coming down with a respiratory ailment because I was working so hard that it would go away at just 5 minutes before the service and would come back 15 minutes after the service. I'd be flat on my back. Went on for 6 weeks until I got, I'm supposed to slow down. Also, I noticed that nobody really missed me. They didn't need me, you know. I mean, basically, so I was not, all this doing this, and I began to balance out my life, and then I got well. So I think about my life, and I think about Mother Teresa and what she said. She wasn't about just being a human doing, but being a human being. And I've got kids, and I got a dog, and I got a wife with a great sense of humor. And playing is an important part of life. Are you playing enough? Maybe your balance is in the other area. Maybe you need that quiet. An hour a day, Mother Teresa made them. Be in the silence, be in the quiet, do the spiritual work. I'm not saying you have to spend an hour a day, although you may, but take the time. Do you have the balance? Do you need more of the horizontal, the loving and the playing with others, or do you need more of the vertical? Where do you need that balance? Where in your life are you needing to balance out your life? Because the result of balancing out your life is that you lift up your light. You begin to generate an inner light. I could tell this story. It's been a couple of decades or more, so I could talk a little more frankly about it. But there was a situation where I found out some things were going on in a church that really should not be going on. And I was really feeling concerned about it because this was some serious stuff, and there was going to be some ramifications. some things that weren't on the up and up were going on. And so I took it into prayer, and I go, what do I do about it? And I did, and this is something I'm really going to suggest that you do. Write down your question, write down, I don't know, and then start writing the answer and see what shows up. Well, anyway, I did this, and what came to me was that hideous strength. That hideous strength? Well, somewhere in the recesses of my mind, I'd seen this book. It was by C.S. Lewis, but I'd never read it. So I read it, and it was all about these bad guys and these good guys. And the way the good guys dealt with the bad guys is that they pretty much ignored them, danced around their issues, and spent their time holding up their light through these two methods. They played and connected with each other and made sure they were in a constant relationship of love with each other as a community. And the other thing is that they spent their time in their devotions and their spiritual work. And in balancing that out, the situation just seemed to work out on its own, and they didn't have to contend like this. You know, Jane Elizabeth Hart was talking to me. I was going through a situation where I was all worried about what somebody was doing. And she said, Greg, why don't you just dance around their issues? You're not here to teach them anything. You know, we think we got to get our point across. Just let it be. It's the art and science of letting things be. So in that situation, I began a concerted effort of keeping my light up. I made sure I played every day. I made sure that I did the things that meant recreation and joy and happiness and satisfaction. And then I also made sure that I had my meditation time and that I didn't shortchange that spiritual time, that inner time of connectedness and spiritual awareness. And our board treasurer had somebody contact him out of the blue who had the means, did pro bono work, wrote a 30-page report, and got the whole, without even having to lift a finger or get confronted at all. And without any conflict at all, the whole situation worked out beautifully. And it was all just getting that guidance and then holding the light up. Where in your life do you need to hold your light up? You know, I remember when I was a Fuller Brushman, when I was in college, my meditation teacher said, before you go up to any house, visualize light in that house. Don't do it to make a sale, because that's conditional and that's manipulation. But instead, just imagine the light in that house. And then go up to the house, and whether they buy or they don't buy, you know. And I ended up with the highest per hour sales in 3 counties. My manager, though, wouldn't let me come to the sales meetings because I told him how I did it. Not that part, but how I was doing my sales. He says, I don't want you to infect the rest of the people. You're not doing it right. But he said, but keep doing what you're doing because it's working for you. But if you're not coming from a manipulation, if you put the energy out there and then release the outcome to God, I put my energy out and I release it to God. Together? I put my energy out and I release it to God. That light will shine forth for you. I had an experience when I was hitchhiking around the country when I was in college where every time a car would come up that was going to pick me up, this is 1972, we wouldn't want to do this today, right? But I would put light around the car. And you know, I would just know not to go in this car or whatever. You know, put your light out. And Jesus said if you put your blessing out, your essence out, and if it comes back to you, keep it. But if it rests there, then you know that it's okay. So, you know, where in your life do you need to put your energy out, put your light out, visualize light, and keep your light up? Constantly lifting up your energy into that place where results can happen. You know, I was sharing that there were 2 kinds of joy. There's happiness, which is conditional, and there's joy, which is unconditional, but then there's bliss. Bliss is the next step up. That is the kind of happiness and joy that not only is unconditional, but blesses others, because bliss and bless come from the same root. So if you can generate enough joy, enough light, enough energy, you start to be a blessing to others, and you start generating, and things start shifting around you without you even knowing it. You may be the only person in that person's life who is loving them in any way, shape, or form. You know, I've shared before about Jane Elizabeth Hart and how she was working with a woman who also was named Jane in her office, who was her supervisor, and she was hell on wheels and everybody hated her. And she would come up to Jane and just correct her, even if she was doing it right, she'd correct her. And Jane said, what am I supposed to do? He was like, you need to learn how to love unconditionally. So she just loved her unconditionally and loved her unconditionally. And the day came that she retired, and they had their retirement gathering, get together. But this woman, Jane, that was her supervisor, disappeared. And Jane went into the restroom, the ladies' room, and there she was, crying in front of the mirror. And she put her arms around her and said, what's wrong? She said, you're the only person in my entire life who's ever loved me. There was a reason why she was that way. You may be the only person who can shine the light in such a way that it moves from happiness to joy to bliss and then moves out and touches the people around you. So where in your life can you keep the light up? Can you move from conditional joy, happiness, to unconditional joy? To move from that kind of a life that is giving to get to just simply being a fountain of joy. It really requires you to get clear on what your spiritual purpose is in life. Can you identify what you think your purpose is in life in a matter of a sentence or a phrase? Do you know what your mission in life is? You know, there's a Unity minister down in Georgia named John Strickland. When he was the head of Silent Unity for many years, he wrote an article in Unity magazine, and I clipped it because it meant so much to me. It talked about, in terms of their organizational structure, but then also as individuals, how important it is to be clear on what is ours to do and what our mission is. Hardly a week passes, he wrote, that I'm not presented with a list of ought to do's. Frequently I'm approached by well-meaning individuals who love Unity but feel that we ought to do certain projects special and close to their hearts. I'd like to share some ideas with you about how we decide what to do and why some good causes are not addressed. This process is one that I believe translates well into our personal lives also. First of all, we must be able to know and articulate what our work, our mission truly is. There are so many worthwhile projects in this world. The question we have to ask ourselves is, what is ours to do? We simply cannot do it all. We can't be all things to all people. And I'm not being negative at all. In fact, this is a great positive statement. We receive the guidance to know what our mission in life is. Once we know this, we will succeed in a wondrous way. We must first determine what is ours to do and then apply our resources to that work. So, what is yours to do and what's not yours to do? And are you doing things according to the agenda of the people around you? That doesn't mean that you're not supposed to fulfill what you're supposed to do at work. But at some point realize that your life is your own and you're given this precious gift. And during this time you really have an opportunity to do these two things, generating joy and growing spiritually, reaching out to others and then lifting up. And there's great power in that. But it means that we have to stop unnecessarily contending with others. I'm feeling led to share a story that some people may find a little bit challenging, a little bit strange. But it happened to my daughter Rosalie. When we were living in Michigan, she was taking lessons in karate at an Aikido, actually, at a dojo. And there was the karate master who had been the champion of Japan. He also was the private personal student of the founder of Aikido, and he was well up into his 70s. But she said that Aikido, which is a type of martial arts that does not contend, but rather moves with the energy and flows with the energy of others, is such that she said that he had two of his biggest, burliest black belts charge him in an attack mode, and he just stood there and didn't move, and he threw them across the room. She saw him do this. She swears that was true. She also said that he had somebody put a quarter in their hand, and he just looked at it, and it got so hot that they had to drop it. This is through spiritual energy. Now you say, how could that be? There is a lot of spiritual energy in you. Maybe you can't do those things, but what you can do is get out of the contention, but rather move into a more playful attitude towards life. Mahatma Gandhi, when he was negotiating the final independence of India from Great Britain. He was negotiating with Sir Winston Churchill. And they would put him up, not in a hotel in London, but they would put him up in a poorer part of town. I guess he was more comfortable there. And so there he was in that poor part of town, and the kids would be out in the street playing what we call soccer or football. And he would always go out every single day and play with them. And they asked him, why were you playing with them? And he said, because that's what I need to do to prepare. They said, well, shouldn't you be preparing for your negotiations and for the speech you have to give? He says, I'm sure God will give me what I need to say. Where in your life are you taking the time to play, to pray, to have the horizontal, the vertical, to move into a greater and greater experience of joy, to lift your light up so that you can move through these situations? You will be given intuitively what you need to do if you do these two things. So the question is, where do you need more balance? Do you need more of this loving your neighbor as yourself, or more of the love of your Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength? Do you need more of the reaching out, love one another as I've loved you, or more of the connecting, ask, seek, and knock? You know, one of the best ways to connect with your source is to simply involve God in your needs. That's what we've got the 4T program about. And there were a couple of people in our church in Albuquerque I want to tell you about. One of them, in the desert, decided he wanted to live by a stream. And how many streams are out in the desert? But he wanted to live by a stream. So he had his prayer group, his circle, pray with him. He did his visualization and his affirmations. He did our treasure map. He worked for those 12 weeks. And by the end of the 12 weeks, somebody told him about right over the mountain where there was a little pocket where just enough rain fell and there was a beautiful little stream. Today, 15 years later, he not only is living there, but he's also an ordained minister, and he's also the administrator of that church. And there was a woman and a man, they took it, and their dream was to live in a house in the desert again where they could see a 360-degree vista with no houses or signs of people. Well, if you can see forever in the desert, how are you ever going to have that happen? But there was just this one spot that just was situated just right, and they were guided before the end of the class series to buy this land. And the last thing Lynn and I did as we were driving out of town, as we moved out of Albuquerque, was we had lunch with them and saw 360 degrees, you couldn't see a single soul. And it was just the perfect thing. Now these are mundane, human, practical things, but sometimes the best way to get in touch with your source is to involve your source with your everyday life and your needs. So we're going to do that now. We're going to lift up some need in your life into the light, and we're going to move with that light. So just take whatever is on your mind, on your heart, and lift it up. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Lift up. And just share what it is that you truly need in your heart of hearts to have shifted in your life. And lift it up in the light without outlining. Just lift it up. Up, up, up. And then just let it go. And know that your part is to reach out with your heart to others. So feel the ripples of love energy move out from your heart to the people in your world. And to hold your light up. So be aware that you are lifting up your light and letting it shine. Thank you, God. And so it is. Now a deep breath and let it out. And get ready for that spirit of fun and play that's represented by our picnic today. Because it's really about keeping our light up. Lifting our light up. You are the light of the world. Let your light shine. Whatever the situation in life, more light is needed. Whatever the prayer, light is the answer. Whatever the need, we need to keep our light up. Another way of expressing this light is joy. And Jesus identified two ways that we can tap into this incredible wellspring of inner joy. The first is to reach out to others with our hearts. Love our neighbor as ourselves. I came that your joy may be made complete. Love one another as I have loved you, he said. Loving one another is the way we generate this joy, the level of human experience. And so we just feel the rippling waves moving out from our hearts, blessing everyone else in this room, everyone in our worlds and in our lives. If love is the answer, what could be the question? Feel the rippling waves of love and moving out. This lifts us up into a joy that connects us. For he also said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. I came that your joy may be made complete. Ask in my name and I will fulfill it. And so, whatever you need, connect with your source. This too generates love. What is the need of your heart? By reaching out in love to our neighbor, by lifting up in love to our source, we connect with inner joy and we hold the light up. We lift it up. We lift it up. Imagine that you're lifting up your light, letting it shine, and keeping your joy, keeping your love, keeping your light up. Up. I love the Lord my God with all my heart, soul, mind, and strength. That is, I connect with my source. And I love my neighbor as myself. That means I reach out in rippling waves of love. And I hold my light up, and I lift my light up. And I experience a joy that is not conditional, dependent on circumstances. Moving beyond mere happiness to a joy that is full and complete, jewel-like, that can be looked at through every facet. Whatever is going on, wherever I am, God is, light is, love is, joy is, and so it is.